I'm going to take some moments to explain the anatomy of the stamper and the act and fact chains a little bit more, and what the inner and outer face of the stamper are. So to start, this right here is a traditional stamper. Just think about something that you'd use to stamp. It has some kind of mark on one side that you typically put ink on, and that would lay the mark that you're stamping. My stamper is a little bit different than this. It still has the outer face, which is exactly the same, but it also has an inner face. So if you imagine this is actually a little thing you can go inside of, like a room, and this is a screen. That is the inner face, and the other side is the outer face. The interface is how the name from the last video perceives the moment. Perceives means how it sees, what it knows, what it can do, both of those combined. You can kind of imagine it as like a little guy in there with his eyes facing the interface. So what he sees inside of there is basically his moment into the world. But the problem is, we need a way to get that moment, the interface, from all the fact chains, because it needs to be some kind of overall state or picture from everything that's happened before. So down here we have several fact chains that I've created, 3 space ones. Imagine there are hundreds more. Some being ones, imagine there's hundreds more. Same with Portal. I was too lazy, but I still wrote the message and said it. And these numbers right here are important because I'm trying to show you they're in order. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. Each of these is an individual fact, and this can go off into... Okay, so step 1 to making that interface. This moment is going to be in space / which is the root space. So instantly we can remove or filter out all the chains that aren't in that space. So if you remember from before, we had space home garden, so none of those chains are going to be involved. And beings and matters are actually contained inside of space, so everything that's not in space / can be removed. So it turns out that the only thing that was on space root was being Tim and this matter portal. So as you can remember a fact chain, each fact is a number like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I've laid them out in this order. So this would be the very first fact in one moment. This would be the second moment, third moment, fourth moment, fifth. And if you wanted to reread everything from scratch, you would go in this order to get to the final chain, or how we got to where we are, which is also sort of the projection. I say sort of because I'm going to explain it a little bit more. But I'm going to pull up a little clip right now showing how a circle can go to a triangle so you guys understand this next part. Okay, so from that last video, we have this triangle, and all I've done is really just pushed it against this wall. So if you imagine you move this point to this wall, these 2 points to this wall, you can squash this whole triangle to be this shape. So that's how I derived it to be more of a right triangle. So this is continued from last page, but I didn't write 7, 8, 9 because I got lazy again. But let's say 4 and 5 override 2, 3. So if these facts happen later on, and let's say 2 and 3 were make building red, and 4 and 5 were make building blue, then these facts later on would overwrite 2 and 3. So really the end state would be 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, because 2 and 3 would not be included. So as it reads through, if it finds something that gets overwritten later, it basically will remove it from this triangle, which I'm just using visually to show you guys. So this would be the full triangle with all the facts, and if you remove the spots that are the facts that weren't needed, you would end up with more of a shape like this. In this full fact chain would make a full circle, which would be a lot of data, unnecessary data, and this smaller one would make more of a circle that has gaps in it because there would be missing facts. So as it unfurls from the triangle, or as it curls from the triangle into the circle, not all of the lines would be there. So you can kind of imagine a circle with slices cut out, but the slices are circular slices that are cut out in the middle. So in the end, you'd have a circle with all the slices cut out. And if we repeat this process for all the other 3 chains that were before, and we stacked all of them, we would end up with the interface being all the fact chains with the final projection made, all of them stacked on top of each other. And that is the moment. So this is perfect for a 3D engine because you can receive these moments as JSON or whatever data shape you need. And basically all the client does is works to translate that into visuals, and then you can have the client side sending inputs to the authoritative server, and everything works great. I had this set up, a little 3D engine to view the story, but the issue is you have to make models for everything, every being, every matter, scene for the spaces, unless you just want it to be really generic, like matrix looking. Everything is frozen artistically, meaning all of the GUIs, all of the models are frozen. You'd have to custom make models to get new stuff. And it's really hard to expand client side. If I wanted to make a new control, like theoretically, let's just say semicolon makes me fly, I would probably have to go and change the client and the server at the same time. Do a ton of stuff. I want to just be able to do this from client side, just inside of the system. I mean, you can in some systems, but it's not as easy as I'm about to show you guys. So what's coming next is the alternative to the 3D engine, which is going to generate AI frames, image-based on the moment. Some of you guys may have seen a couple years ago, somebody made that Minecraft game, which wasn't actually Minecraft. They were just using images from Minecraft, and every time you'd input, it would generate another image and basically make it look like you're playing the game. But it was very dreamlike and hallucinogenic. I'm going to try to use that same idea, but it's going to be grounded in these moments, and it's going to receive moments as words, translate that into the visual with this, and I looked at the current tech, and it can get up to around 80 frames per second, which would be pretty good. If you're in a moment and you don't like the way everything looks, all you have to do is hit refresh, and you're not changing the data of the moment, you're changing the generation of the AI frame. So you can literally just keep refreshing until you get a world that you like the look of. And once you get that, you can stamp that visual seed into the fact. So when you go, I haven't talked about branching and histories, which is kind of like GitHub branches, but for whole entire stories and combining 3D space. When you're going back in the timeline, you can literally see exactly what generation you were looking at, or whoever you're looking back on through that being, which is pretty awesome. You can make custom acts based on word. So W doesn't move you forward because of a registry in the client saying send W to the server, and the server receives W, and W tells it to move forward, and everything's hard-coded. W simply is a word to move north as an act. So earlier in the fact chain, some being basically said, W is to move north. And then before that, they defined moving north is core X plus 1 or whatever. So all that comes from previously in the fact chain, all based on words. So when you're hitting W, that's literally a word to the system. And I have 2 different keyboard modes, a stamper mode, which is every key press you hit is an instant act. So your fingers literally are the stampers, and that's kind of good for stenographers, or this input type mode where you just want to do inputs, and it works chordal, so you can do multiple keys at once. And you can also go into manual stamping mode, which is kind of what everyone's used to. You type multiple letters, and you can use the space bar or enter to manually end the word and make that the moment. So there's going to be two different ways to input X. And the stamper mode is what this one's kind of talking about. So you can just say like WA is moving northeast, north-south probably would do nothing, but you get the idea. And not north-south, WS. It's kind of, I'm using WASD, which is really confusing, but you could really make it so like every key on your keyboard just does something else. Like Q opens up some app, B summons a being. Like I'm just using WASD because that's the simplest way to translate it into things that people would understand, but it also blurs the lines of what's even different about it. Your input is a part of the story. You're making new words into a story. This whole page was a fact chain of me moving around on my world. It would just be like WAS, WWWW, and this whole story would just be that down to right here, which is where I am. Okay, and to finally conclude this, we're going to get back to the outer face, which was the stamp. This side of the stamp. So we've been talking about the inside of the stamp, what it sees, but there's also the outside of the stamp. So if you think about a stamper, it starts up high and you bring it down to stamp into something, right? That's a motion, like a momentum. So at the start of the stamp, there is nothing on this face. It is completely blank. And as it goes closer to where it's going to stamp, this outer face forms more and more into this shape. And the moment it makes contact into what it's stamping into, which is going to be the fact chain, this is fully formed and it's going to make the mark. So this word is the outer face, and that word is the act that the name inside of the name using the being inside of the moment has decided to make with this interface, and it expresses more and more. And the second it's fully expressed and the act is decided, it stamps into this, which stamps the new fact. This face is the act, so say this is run. It would stamp here, which would have turned into the fact chain ran. So this is present, this is past the fact chain. After the name perceives the interface and acts, the act is the outer face, finalizing as its stamp. The stamp it lays, so the facts are the stamps, are the same shape as the act, except made into past tense. Once it stamps onto the fact/act reel, no, it's not only stamping onto the fact reel that is changing, but it also will be stamping onto the name act reel that the name is using, so that you can keep track of the acts that the name's doing, but also the facts that it lays. The moment is completely done once this is stamped, and all of the chains are put away. The name goes back, the being was never even in here. The being was the chain that got folded into this for it to see as the interface. All that gets put away, and truthfully, every moment it doesn't actually redo this whole process. It keeps the projection saved. It only will do this from like a cold boot, or if for some reason the projections were deleted. But ideally, it will be keeping these projections and just updating the cache slightly every time a new fact comes in. All right, that right there was him making the act. I used a human face forming metaphorically because it's like an expression, the outer face. But really, that would just be a single word. And I know that when I say word, that is very confusing, especially because I am speaking English. But a word in the system doesn't just mean a word like it does in English. It goes back to more of its roots, where a word is just an act. And the more complex words that I'm using now are leaves. And when I say these words in English, all of the lower words involved are also acting. The leaf summons from the root, all the way up and invokes all of the words that are involved in this most current word, the words that I'm saying right now, for you to understand. And when many of you hear the words that I'm using, like moment or fact or act, you guys will not have the same act chains and fact chains that I have. So when you fold the moment off these words I'm saying, they will not fold back to the same meaning. You guys will not understand what I'm saying. Most of you will not. As Eminem once said, you'd have to walk a mile in my shoes, at least. And that's why I'm trying to make these videos, because hopefully you guys can start to get some of these moments into your fact chains. So when you hear me say certain words, you can fold the moments properly and get the face that I have and see exactly what I'm perceiving. Until then, I will be the only one loading this interface per moment, which means I will be the only one acting off of it. But hopefully someday others will be able to see the same face and also be able to act off of it, and we can coordinate and work on this together. And I know I'm very alone. I know that I have moved way past the line of common adoption. And you may wonder why. Why am I doing this? I genuinely, from my heart, think, and I say no through that thinking. I know that this is the better way. And no one else sees it. I do. And I have to reach really far out to even perceive it. So I am just working to bring it to us so that it can be ours. I'm losing a lot of contact with a lot of people. But when this works, it will be worth it. It will make everyone's lives so much better. This is built off of my pain and failure throughout my life. Everything that I thought felt wrong or wasn't working was inefficient, crystallized into not choosing A or B to get around it, but to reaching out into places that people don't understand and bringing back an invention, a new answer. I told my brother it's like having a dream where you just hear the most amazing orchestra ever. Thousands of alien-like instruments, nothing that the earth has ever heard, and you have it all in your head, and you try to tell it to people, and half of them will just think you're crazy and not even listen. Some of them maybe will listen, but as you try to explain it, you're just going to use words that they already know, and you can't explain these concepts. So you'll just say things like it sounded smooth, it was like a violin, but it will never get the image across until it's built. And the issue with that even more is you'll go to sleep the next night and dream even more of it, and the next night. And the people who did want to listen eventually will even get tired of it. So nobody will want to hear it. So all you can really do is just keep trying to bring the sounds back and the orchestra together so that they can see it and understand what the words mean. And even new words come from it. The problem is, the power is supposed to be to the people to use things like governments and corporations for their benefit and will. We are now living in a time where we are being pushed around by fiat money and by time, by corporations and governments who have centralized control into middlemen things like data centers, infrastructure, militaries, etc. The solution is to strip away the fiat money and even strip away any store of wealth and rely purely on what nature provides, facts. We must also remove the global time that is based on crystallized frequency and convert everything on Earth to cause and effect systems. At this point, any person from anywhere on the planet, from any nation, will be able to install software onto their computer to join this and become a person. We will use facts, person to person, to establish truth and what is just, while removing our need for using fiat and other currencies. As the people coordinate between each other, slowly networks will form, ideally from a local standpoint rather than from global to local. And the middleman corporations/governments will slowly starve out.